Thank you for hosting this event today. It's a really special gathering of people, and thank you to so many friends and new friends for spending this time together. We're going to be talking, of course, about the rainbow light body and my research into the technology of human transcendence. And as we've discussed elsewhere, and many of you intuit or you know, this is a really strange time that we live in, and people are feeling an acceleration. They're feeling a deceleration. I mean, some of us feel like the floor's falling out from underneath us, and we're headed down some kind of a wormhole that leads who knows where. I think that this is a time for us to really gather our forces individually as well as collectively, share information about what is I think the most important task or role that each of us have. And that is just to simply become more whole and even more holy human beings, to tap into our rainbow light body, which symbolizes and in fact is reflective of our higher self, and live a life devoted to that great North Star of ascension, and indeed of vibration, if I can use the word righteousness. That's really the goal right now, because I feel that during these times, it's so important that we walk the straight line. That the gate, as we're going to see, is narrow, but the reward is absolutely incredible for us who maintain and are vigilant and keep our forces strong. So let's go forward here. My text is just a little bit jumbled in this conversion here, but that's okay. What we're going to be talking about today is derived in part from my most recent free ebook, The Singularity is Near, subtitled The Next Human, the Perfect Rainbow Body, or Perfect Rainbow Light Body, and the Technology of Human Transcendence. I, in this book, document how spiritual and inorganic technology is converging on the human body to create the next human. We are living in a time where we are blending technology with human flesh. We are already enfolded and living within this new matrix. Just try to live without the internet, and you'll see what I mean by how enmeshed we already are in this next human model. We breathe air that no humans have ever breathed before. We see a sky unknown to other humans, especially when the chemtrails are up above. We have knowledge of our cosmos way out and way in, unknown to previous humans. We are the first versions, the first iteration, if you will, of a next or new human being. And in fact, today in Silicon Valley and other technology centers, the next human is in development, full development. It's being called Humanity 2.0 or H+. And in fact, a new skin is being developed using advanced and highly mystical technology. The title, The Singularity, of course, is a wordplay or a pun on singularity. This is a term utilized most notably by Dr. Ray Kurzweil, the technology guru, who promotes a vision of a time when the machines take over and our machines become artificially intelligent. And it's thought to be a time, of course, when the technology or the intelligence of the technology surpasses human intelligence. Just recently, the folks who run the atomic clock have moved the clock forward to 2 minutes to midnight. They did this not because of nuclear proliferation, or not just because of nuclear proliferation, the situation with Iran potentially developing nuclear weapons, but now they have added a new menace to humankind, something that could potentially lead to an extinction level event. And it's not climate change. It is artificial intelligence. Scientists now recognize what a threat this technology has become to humanity. So we are literally now living in the crosshairs of an artificially conscious and intelligent being that is just now coming into most people's awareness. And we're coming to grips with the recognition that our lives are never going to be the same again. That our concept of free will in this scenario is gone. Never again will humans enjoy the barrier, the freedom that a barrier of privacy would give us. We are now fully transparent beings. We talk about wanting to attain a light body, and transparency is one of the qualities of the light body. You can see through these beings. Well, today, of course, we all know the powers of the NSA, the CIA, and other organizations that have an ability through the internet to draw a bead on our lives and see and peek into any and every aspect of our life. Every keystroke, every website visited, every email sent, every photo posted on Facebook is now recorded forever and ever and ever. It's like Judgment Day is here. Judgment Day is the time when our hearts are weighed against the feather of cosmic truth in the ancient world. And if we're found worthy, we're able to ascend and continue on our spiral of evolution at the next higher level. Judgment Day is a time when our thoughts are weighed, we are evaluated, and in every way, shape, and form, we are presently being studied and monitored and tracked that are probably even beyond our individual comprehension at this time. And the ultimate purpose of this is still unknown. If Google is right, that is, if Dr. Ray Kurzweil, Google's technology guru, if he is right in a statement he made in June 2015, in less than 15 years, all of humanity will be hybrid beings. What this means is that we will have some kind of technology implanted within our bodies, in our eyes, in our flesh, in our organs. This is what I refer to as the elephant that is in the middle of humanity's room that few people are talking about, but everyone will be soon confronted by. We are talking about a mega corporation among other mega corporations that now view the human body as fair game for their technology. And they believe that meshing our flesh and fusing our flesh with technology is the way ultimately to attain their stated goal of immortality, a life expectancy of 500 years or more. Google has a search engine, but it is no longer in the search engine business. It is officially in the immortality business. And just recently, they did a corporate reorganization where they renamed themselves Alphabet so that then they can begin promoting some of their more far out projects. So we're in the hands here of some extraordinary technologists who may or may not have our soul's best interest at heart. And this is something that we're going to continue to discuss throughout our presentation. We live during this most amazing time when humanity is attempting to reinvent the human body. That's right, we are reinventing the body. We are crossing genders. We are crossing races. We're now going to begin genetically altering the body in ways that have never been done before. Geneticists can edit DNA to cure disease. They can add new chromosomes to build a super soldier. They can even email one another original DNA. Brain scientists are working on activating the potential of the superbrain. This is one of Google's primary projects, by the way, the synthetic neocortex. Why do you want the power of a single human brain, they ask, when with their implants that will connect you to a synthetic neocortex, you could potentially have the brain power of millions of people simultaneously. That's the blue apple they're dangling in front of us. That's the impossible dream they're going to ask us to live here. And all we have to do in order to live that dream is hand over more of our free will and cash in our flesh. Who will do that? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you do that? These are some of the questions we'll be talking about as we continue. You've got nanotechnology combining with artificial intelligence to create humanity 2.0. The human biocomputer It may even be a supercomputer. This all comes under the purview or the umbrella of what's called transhumanism, which is a worldview that is aimed at elevating the human condition. The transhumanists believe that their mission is to perfect the human body. Mostly they are atheists, although there are leading Christian transhumanists. And we'll talk about that crossover here in a moment. But transhumanism is actually an evolution from being exclusively human, flesh and blood in our biology and our consciousness, to becoming a transbiological being, merging with technology and improving the physiological performance of our bodies. Transhumanism advocates the creation of artificial intelligences, virtual realities, which they propose are going to be much better than the simulated reality we already exist in, life extension therapies, genetic engineering, and much, much more. It's seen as a way to transcend old and limiting human limitations and become the next better version of ourselves. And as you can see by this graphic here, one of the things they're going to do is they're going to try to make transhumanism as sexy as possible so that everybody's going to want it. You'll want it for health, and you'll also want it to be able to accumulate wealth as well. It will be seen as a way for you to remain competitive in an even more competitive marketplace than we already live in today. My interest in this transhumanist movement actually goes back to my 2003 book, Cloak of the Illuminati. In this book, I had taken a look at some of those ancient myths and legends about celestial beings, the gods, the Anunnaki, and others, and how they came to Earth and, it is proposed, had a hand in tweaking our DNA. If you know the works of Zecharia Sitchin, maybe Eric von Däniken, some of the other ancient alien theorists, you're well grounded in this idea that the missing link is coming from a nearby planet or star system. And I think that's a possibility. It may even be a probability. It's not something I can absolutely prove, but I think that there's enough there for us to at least wisely consider this as a real possibility. If we are open to that idea, then we know and recognize immediately that the transhumanist movement actually began in the book of Genesis, chapter 6. This is not something that started in the 1970s or 1980s. It's something that began thousands of years ago. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, we read of the Nephilim, who were on earth in those days, and also afterward when the sons of God, who were referred to as the Watchers, the angels of the Lord and the holy ones, went to the daughters of humans and had children with them. We're talking about the creation of a hybrid being. We're not sure who they are. Are they the sons of God, or are they the offspring of the sons of God and the Nephilim? They were the heroes of old, the men of renown. The word renown means glory, fame. And in my view, when we're talking about men of renown, we are talking about men of glory who literally glow rays, which is perfectly consistent with the other descriptions of the watcher angels, the holy ones, the angels of the Lord, who are described as humanoid, luminescent, shining, and glowing. So what I'm proposing here, we're talking about here, is the moment when the angels of the Lord came to earth, mated with the daughters of men, and they did something very important at that time as well. They taught humans the secrets of heaven. They taught humans the secrets of heaven. This is the art and craft of resurrection and ascension. This was the primary reason why the angels of the Lord, or the Watchers, fell into earthly flesh and blood bodies. They left their perfect place, a place called Sion in the Bible, where they had these luminescent humanoid bodies, and came to earth and took on flesh and blood bodies. They had the ability to phase between the worlds. They could remain in their flesh and blood state, or they could enter into their luminous light body phase virtually on command. One of the organizations that is most interested in the technology transfer that took place among the watchers and the human beings is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. Currently, most transhuman technologies are being developed under the watchful eye of DARPA and other alphabet agencies, especially those connected with the US Department of Defense. I think it's kind of interesting that Google renamed themselves Alphabet, because that, of course, is a terminology used to describe these alphabet agencies, these dark, secretive alphabet agencies who are dishing out this technology. The ultimate goal of DARPA, especially with its Information Awareness Office, is a society under total surveillance, a totally transparent society. That means every keystroke, every phone call, every email, everything you do online is recorded and open to investigation. Back in 2003, excuse me, back in 2003, I became highly intrigued and interested in a meeting that took place in Hawaii. Excuse me. DARPA gathered together the top technology people and brought them to Hawaii for a conference on converging technologies for improving human performance. And this is a page right out of the booklet that they printed after the event. And in this meeting, DARPA proposed that the technologists get together and bring about a convergence of 4 critical technologies: bio, nano, info, and cogno. And they believed that the convergence or confluence of these technologies would be able to change the societal fabric, the weave of civilization towards a new structure. So we're talking about them, talking with people like Microsoft, Apple, Samsung, Google, you name it, and saying, here's what's going to happen. And they proposed then, between 2003 and 2035, these 4 technologies, nano, bio, info, and cogno, would become one seamless technology, and it would be aimed at the human body. Literally the creation of a new skin for humanity. Why they did this, what they see coming for humanity was not disclosed, but there's lots of room to speculate that it could be some kind of a celestial event. It just could be some kind of an ancient plan that they've tapped into, that they're seeking to fulfill. We won't go into any more speculation about why. We're just going to talk about what is for this moment. So we're talking about 4 technologies, bits, or excuse me, let's start with the neuroscience, the brain. We're talking about massive amounts of money, billions of dollars from the US as well as the EU, that are now being poured into mapping the human brain for the primary purpose of being able to program it, to control it, to edit thoughts from a distance, all things they are presently doing. We're talking about nanotechnology, or atoms, technology at such a small scale you can't even see it. 10,000 nanobots could fit on the tip of a single human hair, and you still wouldn't be able to see them. So we're talking about nanotechnology that is literally going to be used at the molecular level to rebuild the human body, to have nanotechnology circulating throughout your body, circulating through your bloodstream, circulating through your organs, looking for signs of ill health, correcting problems if possible. We're talking about other applications for nanotechnology, literally being able to create anything, print anything as if out of nothing. Then we've got the neuroscience. Again, mapping the brain, bits, computer science, atoms, nanoscience, nanotechnology, neurons, neuroscience, and then finally the 4th technology, genetic technology, altering and editing DNA at will. So 4 technologies: bits, atoms, neurons, and genes, or what I just call bang. Bang. Yeah, it hurts. It's one of the most stupendous developments in all of human history, because as these four technologies come together, what we have in our hands are what the ancients used to call earth, air, fire, and water. Bits, atoms, neurons, and genes are just simply the four ancient elements of which our bodies are composed, translated into a new digital domain. What is often, if not always, missing in discussions that I see about bang technology is references to the fifth element, which is called spirit, Holy Spirit, quintessence, prana, love. How can they expect these four technologies to work at any kind of level without an understanding or an inclusion of the fifth element? I think that's going to be the leading question, or the main question, as we move forward into this transhumanist era. Let's take a look at some visions of where the transhumanists see the body going. This is Dr. Natasha Vita-More. In 2003, Dr. Vita-More proposed the whole body prosthetic and substrate autonomous networked avatar body by design. What she proposes is literally creating a new external layer of skin that will have technology enmeshed within it. If you don't like your skin color, change it. If you don't like the texture, change it. It'll be fully woven into the internet, an integral part of it. In fact, you'll be a battery. You'll be a walking node on this global grid, as they call it. But more than that, more than just smart skin, they're proposing replacement organs, an internal whole body navigational grid, increased frequency range for our hearing, increased data storage for our memory storage, as well as other capabilities that will ease our path as we make our way around the Earth. I was really intrigued by Dr. Vita-More's representation of those four technologies. I call them BANG. She calls them INBIC, Nano, Bio, Info, Cogno, Neuro after DARPA. It's the same thing. It's the same four technologies. And the way she illustrates them is quite clever. She shows them as a rainbow spectrum. I wrote to Dr. Vita-More and asked her why she did this, and she didn't give me any particular reason in the reply. She did reply, but she didn't seem to think it was that important. But it is important to me, and you're going to see why here in just a moment. Why the presentation of these four converging technologies are shown as like a feathered rainbow or a new rainbow skin is very important to us, as we're going to see. So here's NBIC, nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technology, and cognitive and neuroscience are the same thing as BANG. Dr. Vita-More again, she says, engineering the new human form of primo-post-human will occur, but not in one fell swoop. The design will come to pass sequentially by replacing the human body bit by bit with generated parts. Despite the fact that primo is a huge undertaking, she says, the sequential process is already taking place. It has been since the first artificial heart, prosthetic limbs, and other appendages have been available. From electronic prosthetics and cochlear implants to neurological pharmaceuticals, we are realizing the full potential of the human form, its skeletal system, and the brain with innovative technologies that will reduce the vulnerability of our body and mental processes. Here's the key. From the transhumanist point of view, they're saying, look, your body's fragile. You've only got a certain amount of time on this planet. So doesn't it make sense to use what limited time you have to ensure that you have more time? And if there's a way to take this fragile body and enhance it, wouldn't you do that? Makes sense. Primo, she says, is engineered like a finely tuned machine and displayed visually like a biological body to mirror the human shape for cognitive association, visual recognition, and aesthetic appeal. Yet the primo body does not age. It's easily upgraded, has metasensory components, 24-hour remote net relay system, multiple gender options. Its outer sheath is primed with smart skin, which vanguards practical design purposes for communication. The model structure is composed of assembled massive molecular cycles or cells connected together to form the outer fabric of the body. So again, we are talking about weaving a new skin here. The smart skin is engineered to repair, remake, and replace itself. It contains nanobots throughout the epidermal and dermis to communicate with the brain to determine the texture and tone of its surface. As I said, if you don't like texture or color, you can change it, press of a button. It transmits enhanced sensory data to the brain on an ongoing basis. The smart skin learns how and when to renew itself, alerts the outside world of the disposition of the person, gives specific degrees of the body's temperature from moment to moment, and reflects symbols, images, colors, and textures across its contours. It's able to relate the percentages of toxins to the environment and the exact radiation effects of the sun. So you get the idea here that they are proposing the creation of a really advanced model of human being with some very attractive features. As I said, one of the transhumanist hallmarks is to try to make this technology as sexy as possible. So here's where they're going with this. Here's what they're saying is that you've got a 20th century body with a limited lifespan, legacy genes, it wears out, makes mistakes, has a sense of humanity, your intelligence is limited, you have a single track awareness, you're gender restricted, you're prone to environmental damage, corrosion by irritability, envy, depression, anger. You're always having to eliminate messy and gaseous waste. Why do you want one of those things anyway, right? When you can have an ageless body with replaceable genes, upgrades, error correction device, part of an enlightened transhumanity, 100 quadrillion synapses firing, multiple parallel viewpoints, gender changeability, impervious to damage, turbocharged optimism through neurochemistry, of course, and it recycles and purifies its waste. Sounds like a perfect solution, right? Why wouldn't you do this? We're already in the rollout phase of this new skin with tattoo electronics, or what they call e-skin. You see the golden wires here. This is going to be woven into the epidermis, but soon will be literally woven into the skin itself. Skin-based or epidermal electronic systems stick to the skin like temporary tattoos. These are going to be temporary only for a little while. You're going to wear them preparatory to actually embodying them or having them enmeshed. And they are designed to pick up electrical signals from the brain. We already now have electronic skin-worn sensors that turn our body into touch-sensitive surfaces for controlling mobile devices. This was just announced by scientists in Germany. So skin, as I'm trying to say here, is the ultimate technology platform for the next decade or so. Every major corporation, from Samsung to Apple to Google, are developing technologies aimed at the skin that will be ultimately serving the purpose of enhancing your longevity, your intelligence, and your overall health and well-being from their perspective. What if, though, you don't want to do that? What if you just want to be an ordinary human 1.0, just flesh and blood, little o you? Well, the thing is, the trajectory of this technology is that this is not going to be a choice. This technology is going to be mandatory. We've already seen movement in this direction with mandatory vaccines in order to enter into schools. We all have alarm bells ringing over some of this already with the famous Christian Mark of the Beast prophecy that we won't be able to buy, sell, or trade unless we have the implants. That is a very real possibility that this will not be a choice, an elective choice to implant this technology in our skin. We will, in fact, be made to do so. But if we don't want to do that, then what do we do? Well, in my view, there is an alternative. And I'm not sure that remaining fully flesh and blood is going to be an alternative. As I said, I think this could become mandatory. This means we've got to do something else. We've got to do something different. And what I have noticed is that this movement, this drive to infuse or enmesh our flesh with technology is feeding an ancient impulse, maybe the oldest human impulse. And that is to develop what we've referred to as the light body or the rainbow light body. And developing this organic rainbow body is, I think, the ultimate and maybe the only protection against what is to come and from these technology companies and governments, and also is the only selfless way that I know of to save our world. And we'll talk about that as we continue here. In brief, the idea of the rainbow body, which we're going to talk about in much more detail in a later segment. Essentially, it's an idea that says that the human body is designed to be spun into a vortex of energy that ultimately manifests or resurrects as five-colored rainbow light, or what they refer to in Tibet as the rainbow body of light. In these illustrations here, these tankas, we see the Tibetan guru Padmasambhava Baba, who's sitting in a swirling mass of rainbow-colored lights of the rainbow body. He holds a dorji or a vajra, a symbolic weapon in his hand that represents the compassionate and skillful means that destroy ignorance, because he has tapped into a source of tremendous universal power that has enabled him to overcome the limitations of the mind and attain the rainbow body. And here you see it now in more detail, again, with the swirling energy pattern now emanating from his third eye. Researchers have made the connection between Padmasambhava Baba and the Tibetan rainbow body and the resurrection of Jesus. Is this the reason why, in his resurrected form, Jesus is portrayed sitting on a rainbow? I believe the answer is yes. And in my work, I go a long way to make the connection between the resurrection mysteries of Christianity and the rainbow light body teachings of the Tibetans and others. It's a powerful combination. We know that Jesus spent time in India and Tibet and elsewhere. He was training in the monasteries. What was he training to do? The answer is he was training to demonstrate the ultimate capabilities of the human body, the art of resurrection and the craft of ascension, and transform himself into the rainbow light body. After Jesus does this, he goes and dwells in the celestial realms as a resurrected being, a heavenly being, in a place called Sion, which is portrayed in Christian art as a populated and very pleasing place. In the book of Hebrews and elsewhere, we learn of the resurrection of Jesus and how he dwells among the angels of the Lord, the very same angels that we saw a moment ago coming down to earth in Genesis 6, mating with human females and delivering to humanity the secrets of heaven. The secrets of heaven have the attainment of the resurrection body or the light body. In the book of Hebrews, we're told that our arrival at Sion, which is also called the heavenly Jerusalem, it's a celestial location, our arrival there marks our acceptance into an innumerable company of angels and just humans made perfect. That word perfect is our magic word. For the past probably 8 or so years, 10 years, I've used it as sort of a golden needle to thread my way through various spiritual traditions. And anytime I see the word perfect, I recognize that it could be a reference or allusion to the attainment of the rainbow body of light, the angelic light body, which the Tibetans referred to as attaining the great perfection. When we have attained perfection, we will know it, because we will no longer be in a flesh and blood body. We will be in a celestial light body. We will have traded human flesh for celestial flesh. They're two completely different things. The angels of the Lord that came down had celestial flesh. They took on human flesh. They came here to teach humans how to transmute their human flesh into celestial flesh and join the other just humans made perfect. Well, who are these people? Who are these just humans made perfect? And how did they get to be so perfect? What did they learn? Who did they learn it from? And can we join them? The answer is yes, we can join them. If we're spending this time on an afternoon together, we are on that path. We are setting this as our North Star to join the company of angels. I went to the dictionary and looked up the words just humans made perfect. The word just means, pardon me, sorry about that. The word just means upright, righteous, and balanced. Humans are a member of the species Homo sapien. Webster says humans are not animal, divine, or machine. Made means shaped or formed, and perfect means complete, fully developed, whole, and holy. So this celestial realm is inhabited by humans who were once upon a time in flesh and blood bodies, but have now shaped themselves into whole, holy, or complete beings. The key thing here that's problematic for transhumanists is that only humans can become perfected beings, not machines. So we've got a little bit of a conflict going on here, and indeed there are very detailed discussions going on right now among Christian transhumanists to see if it's possible for machines to ascend. I'm in fact working on an article about that very subject right now, about the possibility of human machines ascending, and I'll have more to report about that later. So be sure you send me your email address so I can keep you in the loop about this next level of thinking in this regard. So just humans made perfect. That's our goal, is to join these other beings in the celestial realms, in my view. This scenario reminds me of a cartoon I saw with two caterpillars trapped in a spider's web. We're chatting on Facebook. A beautiful butterfly flies by, and one says to the other, "You'll never get me up in one of those things." And that's kind of where we're at right now, individually and as a species. We don't want to get up and pick the meta brain or the smart skin on the left. And maybe a part of us is saying, I'm not sure I can go full spinning rainbow body right this moment. So we're kind of in that in-between phase. The key thing for us is to recognize that the only limitation that we're going to experience in regard to whichever way we choose is our own fear. And that we have to close the gap between our belief of where we're at now and where we want to go. I believe that the only thing that's keeping us from attaining our rainbow body is our culture that says, what are you talking about? Never heard of this stuff before. Only Jesus was able to resurrect from the dead. Who the hell do you think you are, thinking that it's possible for you? You know, you can't do that, by the way, until the second coming of Christ, when it's all going to happen in a mass rapture. So basically what I'm sitting here telling you all in that scenario is heresy. It's blasphemy. I'm speaking against the Lord according to traditional Christian teaching. But actually all we're trying to do is get a handle on, where's this caterpillar going from here? What is it that's within me that's propelling me in this direction here? There's a tractor beam of energy coming off this rainbow body image for me, and it makes me want to go in that direction to develop this aspect of myself. How do I do that? As I said, we're going to talk about it in more detail later, but for now, we just want to close that fear gap and begin to believe that, in fact, this is possible for us. If you want to go the technological route, I encourage you to ask yourself the key question that I asked at the very end of The Singularity is Near, and that is, can bits, atoms, neurons, and genes, or bang, be infused with and transmuted by love or spirit? That's the whole key question right there. How did I come to that question? I had done a radio interview, and as I recall, it was actually during the interview, it might have been Coast to Coast, where I was talking about humans and our enmeshing our flesh with this technology. And I was warning against it, as I have for a very long time. I tried to stay in the middle ground, be a neutral source of information, but people pretty well knew that there was no way I was going to want to, have Apple or Google or Samsung or whoever take control of my body and start having nanobots go into every one of my 11 openings into my body. That just wasn't something that was appealing to me, or is currently appealing to me. And what happened was, a woman called in and she said, "Well, my son is a paraplegic, and he wears arms and legs. By your definition that only just humans, not machine beings, can become perfected, are you telling me that my son will not be able to ascend, that he will not be able to spin his body into a vortex of energy and ultimately manifest as the rainbow body?" And that hit me right between the eyes, because I certainly didn't mean to say that. Certainly it's way above my pay grade to determine who or is not capable of ascending and under what circumstances. But it got me really thinking. It's like, wait a minute, will a person who has an artificial heart, who has other appendages, has implants of any kind, be they cochlear or whatever, whatever, will they be limited in their ability to attain the rainbow body? And what it came down to me was to this question right here. Do you believe that spirit, mind, can control matter? If you do, then it opens the door to saying it's okay to begin to move in the direction of utilizing this technology for life extension, intelligence increasing, whatever aim you ultimately have. So long as you're able to control that technology, so long as you have the free will to turn it off or on at your own discretion, and there is no remote control of you. So with that in mind, we can start to move forward a little bit, at least tentatively, and say, well, okay, I'm going to investigate the technology. I'm not necessarily a proponent of it, but I do see the potential benefit of it. And so long as I am also developing techniques, conscious techniques, where I can control what goes on inside my body, then that's going to provide me with an insurance policy. So let's move forward now and take a look at a history, if you will, of our quest for perfection. Because in doing this, we're going to get a real good sense of the mindset of the technologists, where this is coming from, because as I said, it didn't start in the 1970s or 1980s. This has been going on actually for thousands of years. This process of transforming the body is centuries, millennia old, and is the ultimate quest of humanity. Our dilemma, as I see it, is that we are 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. If wholeness is symbolized by a circle, as it is, then 2/3 divine would mean that we are 240 out of 360, because of course a circle is 360 degrees. So I believe we all start out on the wholeness scale or holiness scale at somewhere around 240. I base this on the second oldest human story, which is the Epic of Gilgamesh, Sumerian story, 2300 BC, about a Sumerian king named Gilgamesh. He's told by a goddess, Inanna, that he's 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. And if he wants to get through the gate of the gods, which is ultimately all of our goal, and attain immortality, he's going to have to clean up his act. Because if Gilgamesh, I'm convinced, tries to go through this gate that he's standing in here at 2/3 divine, It's going to be like walking into a blender. He's going to get his feathers ruffled. So Inanna is saying, hey, buddy, you got to up your game. You got to become 360, not 240. And this is what, in part, becomes Gilgamesh's quest to attain this purity. In the slide, you see him having scaled several steps. He's standing in a gateway that's composed of water or possibly vibration. Two janitors, as they're called, stand on either side of the gate, presumably there to clean up the mess in case he doesn't make it through, I guess. And Gilgamesh is going through this portal or gateway of the gods. Straight is the crossing point of this gateway, and narrow is the way that leads to it, says the Epic of Gilgamesh. Straight is the crossing point. The crossing point is a very powerful word in Sumerian. It's the word Nibiru. Some people think this has to do with a planet, a 12th planet in our solar system. But according to the Chicago Assyrian Dictionary, which is the noted authority on the Sumerian language, the Sumerians themselves said the Nibiru is a crossing place. In fact, they said it was a star, a gate, and a crossing place. And I added those words together and said, yeah, right, great. That's what I've been thinking. Nibiru is a stargate. And Gilgamesh is telling us that straight is the stargate and narrow is the way that leads to it. What does that mean? The way I interpret that is that it means that there's not a mass number of people who are spending their Saturday afternoon talking about the rainbow body of light. The gate is narrow and few are those who actually find it. It's a very powerful, but also a very selective path. It's just not for everybody. But ultimately, according to the Tibetans, it's the only way we're going to get through the gate. Attaining the rainbow body of light, the resurrection body, the glory body of the men of renown is the only way we're going to be able to leave Earth. Let's fast forward 2,000 years. Let's leave 2300 BC behind. Let's go to the time of Jesus, to the book of Matthew, where Jesus says, enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find the Nibiru. I believe Jesus is directly quoting from the Epic of Gilgamesh. He's citing an immortal human truth that survived for over 2,000 years, that the gate's narrow, and that means a transformation is required. We're not going to go through the gate as flesh and blood humans. Excuse me. We are going to attain the great perfection, and then we're going to go through the gate as whole, holy, or complete beings. I was in St. Paul's Cathedral in London a while back and looked up in the dome, and there's Jesus standing in the gate with the two janitors, angels on either side. He has just scaled several steps and is standing in a rainbow-colored robe that is radiating light. It looks just exactly like what we see in the cylinder seal depicting Gilgamesh, doesn't it? It's the same story. It's the exact same story, that we've got to become whole and holy beings in order to enter through the narrow gate. And once again, we're taken back to our comparison of Jesus on the throne in the celestial realms, holding the gate, holding the rod or wand that opens the gates of heaven, and see the exact same corresponding image in the Tibetan tanka of Padmasambhava, who is also sitting on a throne holding the rod or wand that opens the gates of heaven and hell. They're interchangeable images, and both illustrate the same concept of a whole, holy, perfect, or 360-degree being. Excuse me, let me just find the next slide. All of this actually goes back to, again, the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve live in a perfect place. We call it the Garden of Eden. And they have that interaction with the serpent, the wise serpent of Eden who tempts Eve with the blue apple. And this leads to the fall of humanity and our eviction from the place of perfect light and perfect love, Eden, which, by the way, is also synonymous with Sion. And according to the Old Testament, the book of Genesis, the Israelite God, the Hebrew God, Yahweh, was not happy about humanity acquiring the knowledge imparted to us by the serpent, which was the knowledge of immortality. He punishes Adam and Eve, and by extension, all of us, by evicting us from the Garden of Eden, having us escorted through the gate of Eden, where he places angels on either side of the gate and a flashing, flaming sword in the middle of the gate to prevent us from returning through the gate of Eden. And then he does a second thing that is critical to our conversation today. God, Yahweh, made garments of skin for Adam and his wife, and he clothed them. Now, after this moment, we are fallen beings, and we are bound to the earth, to gravity, and to our flesh. What the esoteric Jews knew is that the garments of skin that Yahweh made for humanity were not animal skins. They weren't goat skin or lamb skin or calf skin. They were coats of human skin. Because what the esoteric Jews believed is that when Adam and Eve, you and I, dwelled in our original source place, we were beings of light. And after we fell to earth, we took on bodies of flesh and blood, just like the fallen angels. That's what the word fallen means. It doesn't mean you're evil or diabolical. It means you have fallen dimensionally, vibrationally, into flesh and blood bodies. And our object, ever since that time, has been to reclaim our perfect bodies of light, just like Adam and Eve. Here's a beautiful representation of this concept from the creation of the souls of Adam and Eve in San Francisco, Assisi, where we see the Old Testament creator God in a ring or sphere creating Adam as a luminous being, enfolding him within a mandorla or gateway of light. According to mystical Jewish tradition, as I said, Adam and Eve, the original human race, originally had bodies of light. We were born angels. This light body was our birthright, and it was referred to as a garment. That's a very key term as we continue, this garment of skin. And as the Jewish mystical book, the Zohar, says, when Adam dwelt in the Garden of Eden, he was clothed in the celestial garment, which is the garment of heavenly light. Light of that light which was used in the Garden of Eden. We're talking about celestial flesh again. We're talking about the flesh of the angels. We're talking about the celestial flesh of the resurrected Christ. This is the art of resurrection and ascension, and craft of ascension is about crafting this celestial flesh, this star flesh. This starry cloak is referred to as the robe of righteousness. Because those who are good and godly, which is what the word righteous means, wear this garment of bright white light. The core guiding myth of Western civilization, which we inhabit, is the story of the recovery of our birthright, this light garment, and our apotheosis, our transformation from human to divine being, to our original angelic or divine status as light beings. Once we attain this, we will no longer be fallen beings. We will have reversed what happened in the Garden of Eden and returned to our source place. I always loved some of these Renaissance depictions of the Garden of Eden, where we see the serpent of Eden as a humanoid being, half human, half serpent. Extraordinary depictions. Wish one day we could do a whole presentation. I've got literally dozens of depictions of this. Some of them are really awesome. Now let's tie this into some neuroscience here. What happened during the fall of humanity? According to John Hofecker, he's an archaeologist at the University of Colorado, what happened had to do with our neocortex. the thin layer, the new brain, which was mysteriously switched on or charged or awakened, my terms, 75,000 years ago. Neuroscientists know that the hardware for our brains was present for 250,000, 400,000 years, somewhere in that time frame. It sat dormant until 75,000 years ago, bling, something happens. Our neocortex is suddenly switched on. This happened no later than 75,000 years ago. And whatever happened at that moment spurred our modern capacity for judgment. This is exactly what the book of Genesis says was the capacity given to Adam and Eve. They had the ability to judge good versus evil. They couldn't possibly have done this before 75,000 years ago because the part of our brain that's responsible for that was inactive. This is coincidental? No. This is telling us that something happened to our brain 75,000 years ago that ultimately led to what we call the fall in our enmeshment in human flesh, our capacity for judgment, and also the capacity for novelty and invention. This is the domain of the watcher angels, the angels of the Lord, who imported their technology to Earth. How did they know that humans had their brain's capacity ignited that would enable them to understand and interact with them? Where did the watchers get this kind of intelligence about us? Oh, I know. Wait a minute. Could it have been they who switched on our neocortex? Is this part of the transhumanist movement that was begun when these angels of the Lord appeared? Was this actually pinpointed now to 75,000 years ago? I think that's a pretty good line of thought. The cerebral cortex, this outer layer, this thick covering of gray matter, covers the brain's two hemispheres. Most of it is the neocortex, which is Latin for new bark. The neocortex is our third newly human brain in terms of evolution. This is the part of the brain that Google, Apple, Samsung all have their fingers on the keyboard. They want to get a hold of the neocortex and start implanting or infusing their technology with it to make a synthetic neocortex. Again, this is the part of our brain that makes possible our judgments and our knowledge of good and evil. It is also the site from which our creativity emerges, and it's home to our sense of self. If we think of the spinal cord as the tree of life with the brain on top, the neocortex is the new bark. And this is what recent magnetic resonance imaging of the brain's neocortex actually looks like, this incredible rainbow flower or feather, if you will. So let's go back then to the Garden of Eden and ask, well, what are we really talking about here with a serpent in a tree? Could the tree be our spinal cord? And could the serpent be manifesting in the neocortex somehow? Is this what the book of Genesis story is telling us? Because it sure sounds an awful lot like that. The neocortex, says Carl Sagan in his iconic Cosmos, is also where matter is transformed into consciousness. This is where we do the mind over matter thing. So we want to know about the neocortex and how to fully utilize its capabilities, because if we're going to put some kind of appendage on us that will promote longevity or health, we want to make darn sure, as I said earlier, that we have the brain capacity to take control of that and infuse it with light and love as our ultimate protection. The neocortex, says Sagan, is also the realm of intuition and critical analysis. It's where we have our ideas and inspirations, where we read and write, and where we compose music or do mathematics. And says Sagan, it is the distinction of our species, the seat of our humanity. Some say even the seat of the soul. So our civilization is the product of the cerebral cortex or the neocortex, and we are this close right now to really tinkering with that part of ourselves. It's that part of ourselves that took us from Cro-Magnon, caveman, to modern man, capable of coming up with resurrection technologies as they did in ancient Egypt, capable of creating resurrection portals like the cathedrals, capable of creating the internet as a way of sharing knowledge and transforming a civilization. Early Christians believed that a pious life, a righteous life, an ascetic life in which the flesh and the world are renunciated, were the first and best steps towards an angelic existence and transcendence of the human condition. This was their answer to the switching on, in other words, of the neocortex. That if we want to regain our light bodies, that what we want to do is simply live a righteous and ascetic life, a simple life. But then something happened. In the early Middle Ages, the 5th to the 10th centuries, a relationship began to develop between technology and transcendence. Whereas the ascetics sought merely to get by and viewed their simple tools as having no spiritual significance, in the 9th century, something happened. Technology suddenly came to be thought of as an ally in recovering our lost perfection and renewed body of light, just like Adam and Eve. And this mind shift then led philosophers of the day to propose that technology can not only increase our comforts, but can also restore our divine likeness to Adam. This is an incredible flip, and we now, as I'm going to develop here for the next couple of minutes, are the benefactors of that mind flip. One possible reason for this mind shift is the redesign of the plow so that it could be used with multiple oxen teams instead of just one ox. With the enhanced powers of this tool, humans could master nature as never before and dramatically increase work output. This gave people more free time to pursue their primary goal, which is to return to the perfect state of Adam, which in my view is the original glorious rainbow body of light, a non-flesh and blood body. Technology historians point to this as the first indication that men began to believe, and women of course, began to believe that technology is a divinely inspired gift or even a virtue, like patience and loving kindness. Artwork of the day emphasizes the point that technological advance is in fact God's will. The new technology was viewed as a sign that we were closer to returning to Eden and our light body because we could now master nature just like Adam and Eve had done before the fall. So if an improved plow can be used to till more soil, what kind of tools might one envision to better till the soul? From monasteries and abbeys of Europe, especially the Cistercian and Benedictine monasteries, came a sudden burst of pioneering technological development. In the 10th century in Winchester, England, ground zero, a new image of the creator God as a craftsman appeared. For the first time in Christian culture, we see the hand of God holding tools, scales, carpenter's square, pair of compasses. And soon after, the Benedictine monks of Winchester Cathedral installed the first giant organ, the most complex machine known before the invention of the mechanical clock. So here is the new image of God with his technology transforming our world. Here's another example. This one here is in the British Museum. It's 11th century. God holding a pair of compasses, creating heaven and earth. And in the detail here, we see that God wears his cloak of stars. He has a radiant burst of light coming off his head. And he is surrounded by red-winged angels who are called seraphim. These are the watcher angels, or the angels of the Lord, who came down to earth in Genesis 6. Beginning in the middle of the 12th and continuing into the 13th century, a radical new movement commenced. Instead of waiting and hoping for the return to perfection, the timing of which was thought to be unknowable, monks of the order of St. Francis of Assisi and Cistercian orders began actively and consciously pursuing it. This is a huge mind shift. It's saying, wait a minute, we've heard the second coming of Jesus is going to happen. He's going to come down in the cloud, which is kind of funny, especially today since everything is going up into the cloud, technologically speaking. So we don't know when he's coming, but he's coming in the cloud, and hopefully he'll be coming soon. No, they said that's not the way it's going to be. Francis of Assisi and his monks began to actively pursue their own perfection as if they thought they could accelerate the second coming of Christ. And they believed that humanity's new God-given technology, this super plow and other tools, could assist in attaining our perfection and transcendence. This movement wedded technology and transcendence. And we, as I said a moment ago, are the children of this marriage. Francis had an extraordinary encounter with Christ as a seraphim, as an angelic being, and as a result was beamed literally into the palms of his hand and his head, as well as his side and his feet, the wounds of the crucifixion, called the stigmata. As a result of this, Francis became known as the second Christ, and his movement was dedicated to promoting this idea that we can all ultimately attain this divine status, as Francis is believed to have done. The interesting thing here is that we see the 11th century depiction of God in his star cloak, surrounded by the red-winged seraphim, and we see the exact same thing here with Francis of Assisi in this Renaissance painting by Sacetta. The idea is clear here. Francis has become a perfected God-like being. He is a model of this next human, a way shower. And this is, I think, in part why Francis has such a powerful following around the world. He's known as a very gentle soul, a peaceful and loving soul, but he's also, in my opinion, one of the most esoteric figures, certainly in Western Christian history. The bright light at the front of this train that says that we can actually perfect ourselves was a mystical Cistercian theologian from Calabria whose name was Joachim of Fori. He's just a few years before Francis of Assisi. He was inspired by a mystical reading of the book of Revelation. At the beginning of the 12th century, he predicted that the second coming would occur in 1260, and mankind would enter a new age or millennium and return to perfection at that time. And of course, Francis of Assisi is considered the fulfillment of that prophecy of the return of Christ. Joachim also prophesied that an order of the just, or spiritually illumined or saintly beings, would rule this magnificent 1,000-year period with technology. If the always twist on this old idea was threefold. One, he said that the millennium was coming soon, as opposed to the orthodox thinking that said that the timing was unknowable. Two, human beings can actively prepare for and bring about the millennium. And three, technology can assist us in making this happen. This idea of the millennium comes from the Christian prophecy in the book of Revelation. It tells of the Messiah, as I said, arriving on a cloud and reigning for 1,000 years of peace in company with a select group of humans who are referred to as just humans made perfect in the book of Hebrews. These are the whole, holy, and complete ones who will serve beside the returning Christ. So huddling in cloisters in Europe, their academies, the followers of Joachim of Fiore and even Francis of Assisi began to contemplate the use of technology for reversing the fall of Adam and Eve and restoring humanity's original perfection. They clearly sought to prepare or perfect their bodies for the arrival of Jesus and the millennium, and technology they believed was a key for attaining this transcendence. So they would look at an image like this here of Jesus returning on the cloud at the second coming, and they would identify the helmet of salvation, the rod of enlightenment, the garment of light, the rainbow ring, the glory body, the resurrection body, and recognized that this was a target. They wanted to put on that helmet. They wanted to wear that garment, stand in that ring, ride that cloud, hold that rod as a way for them to be in synchrony with the returning Christ. After Joachim died in 1202, as I said, his mantle was passed to the Franciscans, who commented on and promoted Joachim's prophecies, and according to Christian theologian Paul Tillich, applied them to their order. After Francis of Assisi dies, now comes the English wonder teacher Roger Bacon, who's cited as one of the primary Franciscans who advanced or advocated the return to our original perfection and ushering in the millennium through science and technology. Whether or not he had the rainbow light body in mind when he's talking about human perfection is not known, because he does not use exactly the terms that I'm using in terms of rainbow light body. But I believe that that's what he's describing here. He's clearly saying or equating perfection with the light body of Adam and Eve. Oh, and by the way, in this painting here, we see Francis of Assisi turning over his cloak, and up in the air above him, we see the cube-shaped New Jerusalem descending. This is the cloud ship of the second coming, if you will. Now let's move into the 14th century, where we get late 13th century, early 14th century, where by an anonymous Italian inventor that rocks the world, eyeglasses. With this invention came the idea that the human body is improvable. It goes right along with this idea of attaining perfection and utilizing technology to improve the human condition. Roger Bacon, the Franciscan, is replaced by Sir Francis Bacon, the author, statesman, genius, and prophet. Building on the works of Bacon, Paracelsus, the Rosicrucians, Bacon's works assert that advancement of technological knowledge is essential for human salvation and restoration of perfection. We're talking the era of the Tudors here. We're talking the 1500s now to early 1600s, where Bacon is picking up the idea that, yes, humans are meant to become perfected light beings. And he called upon philosophers to get over their disdain of dirty technology, and instead, we need to command technology to do our will and enjoy the fruits of our labors. The preface to Bacon's work, The Great Instauration from 1620, states that he aimed to demonstrate how the mind of humanity might be restored to its perfect and original condition, pointing to the fruit of his work being the attainment of the perfect light body of Adam. After his death in 1626, Bacon's magnum opus, The New Atlantis, was published. Written towards the end of his life, this novel envisions a utopia, the New Atlantis, that is based on accounts of Eden and the prophecies of the New Jerusalem. And in this work, Bacon promoted use of technology as a way to do this. It's thought that he had America in mind as the New Atlantis. And here in America, the new Adam, the next human, would emerge. America's spiritual founding father, Thomas Jefferson, named Francis Bacon, along with Isaac Newton and John Locke, the three greatest men to ever live. And he advocated that technology could restore human perfection. Now, flash forward to the 20th and early 21st century. In this flash, or the blink of an eye, we find that we are living in the New Atlantis. We are the next human for the Franciscans, for Bacon, for others who would view our world with wild wonder. I mean, put a cell phone in the hand of Francis Bacon. Put a computer on the desk of Francis of Assisi. Would they readily adapt to it? What would it be like? I mean, we are what they had in mind. We can control the tides, harness the light of the sun, read the book of life or DNA. We can transmute the elements, and we can even trigger nuclear chain reactions to destroy ourselves in a flash of light. Astute observers point out that it was shortly after the destruction of the A-bomb in 1945 that the 52 lost Gnostic Gospels and their insights into the archons were discovered in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. These books gave clues on how to handle their potential meddling in our lives. The archons are considered to be a nefarious force that seeks to control the human body. And some people believe the archons are in fact operative in Silicon Valley today. UFO researchers point to nearby Roswell, New Mexico, as the site of the crash of a spaceship in July 1947. Some have claimed that the alien technology and gray alien bodies recovered from the site were the bodies of archons, and they were reverse engineered by top corporations under the guidance of the US military. Hello, DARPA. Specifically mentioned as being alien technology are fiber optics and computer chips. Did beings from the sky drop the secrets of computer technology to us? Whether your answer is hell yes, shit no, or maybe, it's undeniable that an acceleration of technology has occurred since 1947. The period from 1950 to the year 2000 saw the next human create one astounding technological advancement after another. The optic fiber, the computer hard disk, the internal pacemaker and microchip, integrated circuits, the internet, microprocessor, artificial heart, cell phone, superconductor, and synthetic skin, the World Wide Web. Google was founded in 1998. The first iPod was released in 2001. Nano implants appeared in 2005, and the iPhone was released in 2007. It's breathtaking what has happened in the past 50 years, the last 5 years. But what I hope I've shown for you is the whole backstory of where this has come from and ultimately where it is going. It is aimed at our bodies so that we can return to our original perfect light bodies. That concludes this first section